Hello, everyone. Welcome to the
Hello,
session
good
today.
evening. Yes.
I'm Sauravishwa Sen from Catalyst Learning Services, welcoming all of you to the session with us. Catalyst, since 2011, has been focused on training, guiding, mentoring students, working professionals for careers in the social development sector. Since our inception, we have mentored, guided, built capacities in over 500 students to niche a career in the different realms of social sciences across social science research, policy advocacy, grassroots level intervention, state rural livelihood mission, corporate social responsibility, to name a few. Talking about the social sciences and looking at the 191 plus days that we have been spending literally cooped up in our houses, working from home, learning from home, hoping against hope every day, every moment that a vaccine comes out. It's also the dire need of the hour to maintain a balance between our lives and livelihoods. Needless to mention that since the start of the lockdown, the virus has not only infected people, but it has also exposed a lot of fault lines in our society and our systems, whether it is the public distribution system, whether it is migration, whether it is job opportunities or layoffs. We have been thinking like never before, very critically looking inwards into how we can make ourselves more resilient. And when we talk of resilience, I'm very happy to introduce the speaker for the session today, Brishti Datta. Brishti is a student, a professional, a learner who is very close to Catalyst, starting with her association as a learner in Catalyst for her training for social sciences, for career opportunities in social sciences. Brishti went ahead to pursue a master's in social work with a specialization in children and family from the Mumbai campus of Tata Institute of Social Sciences. After which, she started working in the capacity of a CSR consultant with Godrej Consumer Products Limited. The primary focus of her work with Godrej was in gender and livelihood. Brishti also worked on different incubation models and has curated a community resource center to foster collaborations. The idea behind Brishti's work was to enable women to examine their social identities and associated constraints with access and agency. Moving forward, Brishti joined the Indian Institute of Human Settlements, Bangalore, to work closely with the practice team assisting on the synthesis of climate adaptation and in the development of a massive open online course on climate change. Currently, Brishti works with Pratham with the program development team and looks at donor management and partnerships. So before we start off with Brishti, I would like to share a very special note that right from the time when Brishti was already in TIS, I remember second year onwards, she was very keen to understand how she can help us in Catalyst to leverage our reach and impact of learning and guidance to create more responsible and more skilled professionals in the social development sector. And I remember right from day one, Brishti had this innate ability to connect the entire importance of fundraising and the skills associated with it to how healthy our society and the development sector is. Fundraising can be looked in both ways. A lot of times, fundraising is one of the sectors which we find many of our students and learners they want to possibly escape from. But at the end of the day, the moment you step into the professional shoes, you realize the importance of funds, you realize the importance of capital, and most importantly, you realize the meaningful way in which you can generate them. I thank Brishti for taking out her time. She just told me that she's working even on a Sunday. And she took out the time to share her stories, to share her exposure with all of us. I would request every participant in this meeting to please keep your videos on if possible, so that we can have a more human-like interaction in this virtually connected world that we are all of us in. You can of course keep your mics on mute because that helps in lowering interference during the session. We also welcome questions from your end throughout the session. You are most welcome to share your questions on chat while Vrishti is speaking and presenting her perspectives, so that we can address those questions as and when possible during the session. On that note, Vrishti, excuse me for a very long introduction. I hand over the baton to you. Thank you so much.
Hello. Hi, guys.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening.
Please don't call me ma'am. I'm Brishti. You can call me Brishti. Hi.
Oh, hi. Hi, Vrishti.
Hi. So I can't see you guys. It'll be like much nicer if I can see you guys a little bit. I know if there are constraints, like if your video is lacking or any like problem with the connection, you can always turn it off. But it'll be great if you can like show your beautiful faces to me.
Hello, Vrishti. Devorshi here.
Hi, Devorshi. Hi. So you are studying at Catalyst?
Well, I studied in Catalyst in 2019.
Okay.
Right, sir. 2019, right? Yes, and yeah, 2019. Then I got into St. Xavier's University, and I'm right now I'm in third semester, and I'm pursuing master in social work.
Great. How is your experience at St. Xavier's?
It is really good, to be honest. It's really nice.
Nice. Sir, do we have everybody else on the call? Like, can everybody just give me or raise up or like just say hi and something?
Yeah.
Then
I
I
think
can start.
everyone can say hi. You can even say like what you're doing right now. Please go ahead.
Yeah, that would be really great if like introduction happens.
I can see Jagdish with a beautiful background. Jagdish, why don't you share your story with Vrishti?
Hi.
Hi, Jagdish.
I'm audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Hi.
Okay, thank you. So, I'm Jagdish, currently staying in Guwahati, Assam. And basically, I'm the founder of Safal India Foundation. I knocked in the Guwahati due to the COVID. And we are working with flood victims in Assam currently. So, recently we started our program called the Hope and Happiness Program with the Emotion Foundation, Emotion Motor Foundation. So currently we are working with around 600 students in the flood affected areas. So I'm looking after for the program as well. Basically, our organization is working with the higher secondary school students to develop their entrepreneurial mindset.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So if we do a round of like a quick introduction about just like just to know that guys are here, like you guys are here, that will be great.
Yeah, Rohan, why don't you quickly give an introduction of yours? Yeah.
Sure, sir. Hello all. I'm Rohan Mhatre. I'm from Mumbai. Currently, I was attached to Catalyst Academy in 2019-20 when I was preparing for entrance of TIS. Preferably Mumbai I was looking for. So currently, I've joined as a student in Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Masters in Health Administration, Hospital Administration. So our first semester is going on. Yes, and that's all. I'm MSc in Organic Chemistry, and I've also done post-graduation in Human Rights. Yeah.
Great.
That's great.
So this course is much relevant for me. I mean, whatever discussion we have today, I am feeling blessed to be here in this webinar, because fundraising is something is very essential factor in health scenario in today's country, because pandemic is there. Lots of vulnerable communities we have in our country and across the world. So the financial resource is like a lifeline of any organization. So I feel much to learn for a candidate like me in today's webinar.
Sure. I'll
That's
help
all.
you as much as possible.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you.
The
So
others,
do we have?
quickly. Yeah, Monami, anyone else who would just like to set the tone, please?
Or I can begin, whatever. Like
You
if
can,
they
you
are
can,
more comfortable once I begin,
yeah, you can
then
start
we
off. You can start off, Vishnu.
start off. Right. So I'm going to like be very informal with you guys, because like I'll have like, please be free with me, and like if you have questions, just write it, or you can like sort of stop me in between and also ask them if it's relevant. So I have, as sir already mentioned, I worked at Godrej, and I worked, so during my like tenure in Godrej, I used to sort of look after the operational part of the program. And that sort of helped me to understand how a CSR or an NGO or any other stakeholders, they sort of run programs. It's more like sort of, once you are on the field, once you are like getting everything done, the skeleton of the program is ready, you sort of like start action on it. So I sort of used to work on that level. Moving forward, when I moved to IIHS, my role sort of shifted. Like, if you sort of move in a, like, on a map to a certain like other location where you can see like program implementation, you sort of can, I started looking at like how to develop programs, like in like before, like sort of making these programs happen on the ground. We sort of try and see where there is a gap which can be filled in. So that gap, those gaps can be filled in by an NGO partner, like a non-profit organization. That those gaps can be found by corporates, can be found by educational institutes. In my case, IIHS is a research institute. So I used to sort of try and understand livelihoods of women under the like huge umbrella of climate change, and try and build a support for these women so that they can go back to work. So I'll sort of tell about my work at IIHS a little later, but on a like bigger umbrella, that's what I used to do. Like, how to create these programs, like what to do to sort of support these people was my core function there. And moving from there, I moved to Pratham very recently. It's not even a month now, but I look at donor management and fund management in general. But fund management has like fundraising in it also. And donor management is nothing more than like sort of interacting with your donors and your different stakeholders, who can be the government, the non-profit organizations other than Pratham, and also the corporates who like sort of shell out their CSR funds to these organizations and channelize them in certain programs that they are interested in. And we sort of like, there are teams, there are program teams who sort of implement it. So that is my like work journey after I left TIS. And from there, I have been able to collect some, like from my experience, I've been able to collect some idea of how like funds move, what kind of like skills we need as change makers in this sector. What kind of skills do we need to sort of function in this area? Though like it's sort of, people can move in different directions. There's no such ki acha, like you have to move in this way only. But this has been my idea, and that's what I'm going to share with you guys today. Right. So moving forward, from a very, very generic point of view, like if you sort of like like start with the very fundamentals of funds. Like funds can be sort of gathered from various ways, and there are various ways of gathering funds for non-profits, and one of them being like sale of products and services, by which I mean like these non-profits usually team up with educational institutions or research organizations who sort of outsource the job which is supposed to be done on the field, like the research like the data collection is supposed to be done people who are in the field, and nobody better than these non-profits have a very good idea of what goes on in the field. These people have huge reach on the ground, and when you provide these sort of services, as in help in data collection or help in collating the data and all of that, these people are like directly paid for that, and that's how you like generate a lot of funds for yourself. Next comes the partnerships. Like understanding partnerships can be of all, like of many levels. It can be with local communities, it can be with governments, it can be with research organizations, it can be with educational organizations, it can be with corporate conglomerates. And in India, it can also be with these international organizations like UN donors can be there. There can be individual people who like very strongly feels about a cause and wants to donate a lot of money. But in India, there's a like huge flow of CSR and government funds that are coming our way now, because of, as you know, there's a like 2013 wala jo Companies Act ke under CSR was a mandate that you have to at least put in 2% of the profit. So these people sort of like, now there's a huge inflow of these funds. Then there's in-kind resources. In-kind resources is nothing more than volunteering, internship, all these people who do like free of cost work for organizations where you strongly feel about it, and you cannot sort of donate in monetary amounts, but you can always give services. So that is in-kind resources that organizations have. A lot of organizations like get donation in, like for example, office spaces, furnitures, computers. These are in-kind resources that you can have. They also come under the umbrella of funds. So raising funds from the public is nothing more than these crowdfunding, or like putting up these fairs where these people sort of sell soaps or handicrafts or agricultural things which have been like gathered from the programs that they sort of work in. And these people are entrepreneurs or have vocational skills, from where they sort of create these like things, and then they bring to the cities or to their office spaces or to malls and these places, and they sell. And that's like from publics they are raising funds, or there's always crowdfunding. So yeah, these are like the broadest of the ways that usually you get funds from. Moving, so I'm going to sort of like, I was telling, as I was telling, like I'm going to sort of shrink down to partnerships, because that is where we sort of come in, like we sort of come in that picture. Otherwise, there's not much of our role in the rest, though those are very important. But partnerships is a place where you can sort of build your skills to be a extremely important part of it. So when you talk about partnerships, as I was mentioning, uh, partnerships can be of various types, but like business conglomerates in today's picture for India, it plays a huge role. Like CSR funds are one of the most integral part of these non-profits. Like these non-profits mainly run on CSR fundings. Like we have a huge amount, like we have almost, Pratham has almost, I think 15 plus corporates that we partner with to implement our program and with their funds, or they also come up with certain programs that interest us, and like we take it forward. Next, government plays a very important role. So there can be like certain policies or certain programs or certain like certain policies mostly, and which can be converted into programs. For example, NSDC approves the vocational training that a lot of nonprofits nonprofits usually like have as programs. NSDC is a huge partner there. Like they certify the courses. This helps in like the promotional effect of the program goes a lot up, and also they help with funds. Local communities being the people with whom you actually do the work with. These people are see, it's not like they are the beneficiaries, but it's more like, you know, they are an equal stakeholder of that program. So when we are talking about partnerships, we consider that local communities are as important as conglomerates, governments, and educational institutions. Talking about educational institutions usually come in like in the very like beginning of the program, where you sort of do a intense amount of research to identify a gap or where you really want to make a change in. So for example, if you want to sort of work with children in the field of nutrition, then you sort of try and understand key, if I want to work with midday meals, for example. So then you have to sort of find a gap where the program has like been not implemented well, or you have found a fundamental gap in that program, and you like write a proposal on that, and you sort of like approach people who are interested in working with nutrition and with children. Then your one of your stakeholders become the CSR funds that come in from, as in the corporate, and the other becomes the non-profit who is the implementing partner of it. So educational institutions usually come in the beginning of a program skeleton, like where they sort of try and build the program, why that program is needed. Also, they come at the fag end of it, where you try and understand what kind of impact the program has, if a program is at all necessary, or if there is like the benefits of the program are like really like, you know, highlighted, they are making certain like big changes, or do we need to sort of re-establish the program and tailor it in a different way, and because there is no effect. So these are the two places where the where educational institutions or research organizations usually come in, right? So does anybody have any questions up till now, or do I move forward? Guys?
Brishti, if yeah, I have a question. That if any organization needs a collaboration with this organization, then how to approach how to approach them?
How to approach them, as in what capacity do you want to approach them in?
Suppose now, since I'll be working in hospital sector, and hospital has found a few needy, vulnerable communities who need the cost of funding for operations of some severe diseases, severe conditions. Then what all documents, what all representations required? What are the expectations of these NPOs, non-profit organizations or philanthropists?
Right. So depending on where you work in, for example, if you are working in a, for example, a Tata Memorial Hospital or a Godrej Memorial Hospital, these people will have funds that are directed to these hospitals. And with the right proposal or the right, so for example, if you want to support a community which is going through a certain like problem, and you really want to address that, then you sort of have to write to the trustees of that hospital, and also have to get to know the channel, like where your funds, like the hospital runs on certain funds. You have to also understand what funds are being channelized in that hospital, where are they actually coming from, and henceforth, like again, follow that trail up to understand if they can support your need. If it's a hospital that is supported by these kind of places, for example Tata or Godrej, if it's a government hospital, you can always sort of talk it out with the with the government stakeholder there in it. For example, if it's I'll just give you an example. If it's, I live in Bagha Jyotin in Kolkata, and if I know that Bagha Jyotin hospital needs something of something related, which is like I need to support, and I'm going to figure out or find again, like, who are these people who are involved in the funding structure of that hospital. It can, because it's a government run hospital, very probable, like, obviously it has a lot of stakeholders from the government and will have a lot of like political affiliations also attached to it, right? So then you need to find out and tap those certain places. So what I'm trying to sort of tell you is that these channels are very important to work up or to work down. That channel is very important. You have to figure out that skeleton of the organization and also understand where these funders are situated. And if you really want to sort of approach them, then your one is very important, is that you actually put structure into the problem. You can't just like start like going there, like just go there and tell them, listen, I need to support this community. There is a complete like sort of, you need to provide them with numbers, with proposals, with documents from your end. Ki, Acha, this is a reason that I really feel that we need to address. This is in our geography or our locality, and I think this is what we can address. This is how we can address this, right?
Sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Anybody else? Guys, if you can just give me a heads up, then I can move forward also. Or you guys have questions, then I can answer them.
I guess we can move ahead.
Okay, right. So as I was saying, so once these funds are sort of allocated, right? If you have these funds, once these funds are sort of allocated by, for example, I'll tell you, like when I used to work in Godrej, every end of every financial year, which was in like March, we used to get, like we used to sit with a huge amount of like, this has been allocated to the GCPL program, like this has been our profit, and out of that we want to allocate, this year we will allocate some 3.5 or 4%, or like a minimum of 2% we are going to allocate to GCPL. So that comes in a chunk. But what we have to do is every year we do build new partnerships, every year we renew programs with our existing partners. So every year when the funds actually come in, it comes in a chunk. For example, you'll be given, like, you look at numbers as in ki, theek hai, this year we are giving 2 crores to GCPL. Now these 2 crores are sort of like, they are put into the right channels. You sort of sit and see ki at a level where you take it down to per unit, like one stakeholder of that program, like each student who's going to get trained or each child who's going to be fed, how much money do I want to allocate there? Like it goes down to that extent. Then you sort of scale back up again. So that from the CSR's end, as in the corporate's end, there will be a team who is designed to sort of sit and allocate funds just like that. And then again, you talk to your non-profit partner, who is your implementation partner on the field. So once your funds are allocated, you sort of move to your non-profits in places where you want to. For example, there will be different geographies. There can be Maharashtra, Gujarat, West Bengal, and you sort of distribute funds according to that. Like moving a little back, how these funds actually, like when you have that kind of money, when you have like, a huge amount of money in your hand, and you want to do something for the society, how do you actually sort of start? What is the starting process? The start of it is actually the interest, very like in a very like lame way. It's actually the interest of these organizations or the non-profit that they like sort of want to work in. That is what is taken into consideration. So for example, Godrej feels very strongly about, like GCPL feels very strongly about vocational training in beauty, because they have a range of beauty products. They feel that if we work in the sector of beauty and with women, to sort of provide them with livelihoods that can be entrepreneurial in nature, that can be vocational, that can give them access to jobs, or they can also start up something for their own. They feel very strongly about that. So that got converted. That was a cause that they wanted to address. That got converted into a program. Uh, and as and when like they started like sort of trying to understand what goes when you want to develop a program in beauty, they realize that beauty alone cannot be addressed. Like with beauty comes in, like women are much more attached to this concept of beauty, and when you sort of want to address a program which is related to beauty, you have to address it to the gender issues. Like the whole, so Godrej started, like then you took it a step forward, like from the product idea that they had ki, acha, like we have beauty products, so we need to sort of do something in the field of beauty. But then like with further understanding, they realized ki, nahi, beauty cannot be addressed just like that. It has to be like a little more than that. We have to sort of also address the gender issues that is related to beauty, and also try and create livelihoods. So these are, like I'm just telling you the inception of how a, like of a program, how that happens with a CSR. Similarly, it can also happen from a non-profit's end. For example, Pratham realized very early in their very early during like when Pratham was founded, that they want to do a lot of work in the field of education. But education is something that you have up till, formal education is something that you have up till the age of 18, but there are a huge number of dropouts. People don't, like children don't want to finish off, like cannot finish off their formal education, and this was a gap. So what they wanted to do is, like, to complete the circle, they thought, acha, like these children can actually go into like schools and complete everything and get formal jobs, but there are people who are dropping out. So for these numbers, can we do something which will prevent them, or from like, which will not let them sort of like, get lost? So they started a vocational training, the Pratham Institute, and they sort of came up with a huge range of programs that they run. So what I'm trying to tell you is that, like, when these funds are allocated, they sort of come from these sort of ideas ki, like we can allocate funds, either it is a cause that leads to the funds, or it's the funds that sort of you take back steps and you come to a cause, right? uh, Next, like if I'm talking about shared value for all the stakeholders, shared value is nothing but, because corporate houses have certain uh, like they come up with certain programs in order to also support their businesses and their causes. Like, given that GCPL has chose to run a beauty program, has a lot to do with that they themselves have a range of beauty products, right? So a lot of corporates, like most of the corporates, will come up with something that has to do directly with their area of work. For example, L&T supports a lot of vocational training in the field of plumbing, in the field of construction, in the field of welding. So that is a, like that is their area of work, and therefore they strongly feel that if I can create employment, or I can like skill, like give skills to certain people, these people will in turn come into my L&T, my job sphere. Like I can be able to provide them with employment and also like the skill. So they try and complete that circle, right? And preferences and policies of the stakeholders, this has a lot to do with like the government initiatives that have, for example, Childline. Childline, do you guys know about Childline? Yeah. Okay. So Childline Foundation were like on a very ground, like basic level, they sort of, if they can if they can identify a lost child in streets, stations, anywhere, they sort of, you can call Childline and tell them about this child, missing child, and then they take it forward from there. So they can, then they like sort of try and relocate them to their parents, or they put them up for adoption, or like they have a range of programs. What Childline did was, initially this was a government mandate, this was in a government policy that was supposed to be implemented by the government, but Childline very nicely sort of understood that they are failing miserably at implementing this program on a very ground level. So what Childline did was, they told the government of India, "Ki listen, you guys are not being able to put this out properly. We have numbers, data, and everything that supports this proposal, and we want you to outsource this work to us, and we can sort of take it forward from there." So this is how like sort of Childline works. Like, so this is this entire program that they run was based on a government policy that they had, and henceforth Childline runs it like that. Similarly, there are, as I told you, Aditya Birla supports midday meals. Akshay Patra supports, like with the help of Bain and Company, supports midday meals, supports nutrition of children. Pratham, with the help of Kotak Education, supports education. So these are sort of these people sort of understood that we need to come together and our interests match, and then you sort of come together and you start a program. Like that's how a program is like developed in a way, right? And yeah, like this is my like I wanted to sort of share key, you know, what skills one must like have in order to be a part of this. Though I'm very sure you guys already have a lot of these, but these I thought, like, you know, if you can have these in particular, as in work on these in particular, it helps to be in this place where I am, like, you know, understanding and for example, communication, because you are in a space where you sort of, if you have understood what I was telling all this while, you are in a place where you have to create an equal amount of balance between the corporates or your funder and the field. And an idea about effective communication will be that you will be able to sort of communicate what you want to say or what you want to do in a very structured manner. That helps a lot. That is one of the like biggest things that you have to have if you want to convince people that, listen, please give me your money. Like, this is extremely important. And next comes data analysis. This was, I was extremely shocked to find out when I actually stepped into this field, that listen, you have to deal with a huge number of spreadsheets, number of like Excel sheets, and like huge number of, like, you know, their targets. There are like a lot of money involved in it. So data analysis comes extremely handy. Like if you are pursuing your master's in this, you must be knowing, or from any other place, you must be knowing like SPSS and research based skills are given like much importance in your syllabus. So I feel data analysis comes really handy in this, because these numbers sort of translate into the actions that you're going to take in, like, in the program. Like if your program is actually running well, and when you're doing it pan India, you sort of like, these numbers only help you to get through. Like this is a little like fundamentals of proposal writing. There's a little like, you know, and now I realize there's a problem in this. It's not only about proposal writing, it's also about reporting, it's also about evaluation, it's also about like analysis, it's also about you know, initially when you start a research like on something which you strongly feel about, it's also about that writing. So basically it's fundamentals of writing. So when you come to writing, and I was actually having this discussion at length with sir, that why this comes in a really, like, out of all of this, I feel this is the most important skill that anybody who's interested in this field should have, is being able to translate your ideas or your suggestions or the gaps that you can see into a proper proposal. So like a proposal will have certain elements of you being able to like persuade the funder, hey, listen, this is the problem and this is the data that I'm supporting the problem with, henceforth this is the gap, and concluding, this is what I present to you, as in this is the solution that I can provide you with. With this kind of compact understanding comes in the funds. Without this, like every organization, every non will have to have a team, like a program development team, who intensively only work on these sort of things. You know, like convincing the funders to either give me your funds, like start a partnership, or even for the continuation of a partnership, it takes a lot of work. So every, like I was just telling sir, every like for 3 months we have to come up with review reports, you know, this is what we have done, this is how your funds have been utilized. Like when you are being given a chunk of money, like for running a program, they're giving you 1.5 crores every 3 months, then you have to sort of divide and show them, listen, this is where all your funds have gone through, like gone into, and following that, what was the impact. So you have to come up with, you know, what was the achievements on field, what was the what were the challenges. All of this comes extremely like important, like these play an extremely important part when you are in this zone of fund management. So moving to softer skills, that like I feel these are the like hard skills that you have to have. Like these are skills that you can actually gain, like you can sort of like, you know, you can actually become skillful in these places extremely, uh, like with proper training it is possible, with the proper and efficient learning it is possible to understand data, it is possible to communicate well, it is possible to like improve writing skills. But with softer skills, I feel this has a lot to do with you as a person, and also what kind of like what interests you. So I feel empathy is something that goes a long way. Like given that you have chosen a career in this, gives that this is a given that you are extremely empathetic in nature. So that I feel that that should be there like throughout for an understanding. Again, like circling back, balance between the funder and the field. This I have actually understand. This I used to like, you know, very early when I was studying at TIS, I got a feeling that, you know, there has to, like, you have to strike a balance between the field and the person who's funding your program. The field team will always be at a very ground level, at a very like at a level where things are actually getting done. So for that you need a very different set of communication skills, a very different understanding of the field is required. Whereas for the funders, again, like a very different, like converting your field ideas into a funder ka report is where you actually play a very important role. This transition happens because of the person who's sitting in between the funder and the field. So this is something that of course comes with experience. But again, like if you have the hard skills that I was actually talking about, you sort of gain this over time. And critical thinking, any day this comes extremely handy, given that, you know, program development has a lot to do with your understanding of the problems that are like that in large are in hand of these organizations, or also understanding the pulse of an organization by just uh, for example, when I used to work with Godrej or IIHS, I realized that these people really want to work in the field of beauty, or in case of IIHS, in the field of climate change. So given this bigger umbrella that you have to also find your niche. For example, like gender, livelihood, all of this really attracts me. So like the intersection between these two becomes your like sort of critical thinking, like, you know, how you are going to translate an entire your entire idea into a program, or translate your entire idea of a change. For example, somebody from the field comes up and tells you, ki, listen, this is the challenge that we are facing. There's digital, for example, for the programs that are running right now, has to be absolutely on Zoom calls or on Google Meets. But somebody comes and tells you, ki, listen, we can't do this because not everybody owns a smartphone. And if somebody does, they are not digitally literate enough to sort of sit and have a Zoom call or understand or learn things over Google Meet. Then it becomes your responsibility to translate this problem into a solution, right? So then before you implement your program, you also have to talk to the funders saying that our stakeholders or the students who are receiving this training cannot has to have a digital literacy class before the actual program, before the actual training, so that this translation, I don't know whether you guys are actually having an idea what I'm trying to say, but this translation has to come from somebody from our capacity, right? So this is like my like this is my formal, like, you know, through the PPT whatever I could sum up. But if you guys have any other questions or anything that you guys want to add, you're free to do that, because I'll still chip in things, so you guys can ask.
Yes. Yes, Vishti. Hi, I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was nice, your presentation. Because somewhere we see the, we are designing some program, and when we are going to the funder, so after working around 2 to 3 months, funder will influence your strategy. You know, how to cope up with these kind of situations, because they are funding and they are giving their inputs, and we design something different. So these kind of situation creating, conflict between the implementation organization and funders. So that time we need, like, empathy and everything and critical thinking, but somehow we are unable to manage this kind of conflict. So could you, share your thoughts on?
Can you please repeat? Like it's not very clear to me what you were trying to say. Can you repeat?
Okay. So actually, somewhat these kind of funders, they influence our organizational strategies because they are funding. So these kind of situation create conflict between the implementation organization and funders. So how we can, cope up or manage these kind of conflicts?
Can you like be a little bit more specific about what kind of conflicts you are talking about? Like, is it an ideological conflict or
No, strategical.
Okay, the strategical conflicts that can happen, like operationally how to run the program that a non-profit and like the implementation partner and the corporate will have, right? So it's not like, these kind of problems don't arise. Let me just give you an example. Pratham has for example, has a beauty program which is now run by the name of Pratima, whereas Godrej runs a very, very similar program which is called the Salon Eye, right? And their ideologies are very similar, and their their target audience is very similar. The stakeholders of the programs are very similar, but the strategies that they have taken up are very different. But Pratham still works with Godrej and runs the Salon Eye and Pratima. So what Pratham did was, I like to sort of understand it from a Pratham's point of view also, because I've seen it from only Godrej's side. They sort of told Godrej ki, listen, we are ready to we are ready to implement your style of this program, because Godrej is a kind of an organization who believes in giving them everything, like how to do this, how to do that, everything they'll give. Whereas Pratham usually deals with people like Kotak, who mostly is not interested in the implementation part of it. So what Pratham did was, they told, listen, the Salon Eye and the Pratima, can come like, you know, be implemented in different places, and according to the need of that geography, it can be changed. So for example, in West Bengal, parlors or salons run in a very different way than Gujarat or Maharashtra. So what is important is that for the implementation partner to also understand the pulse, as I was mentioning, the pulse of this like corporate who's trying to strategically plan something out, and there has to be a reason behind it, why they are doing it. For example, Godrej has a mehendi, has a, what is that, Nupur mehendi color, right? And they wanted to sort of do a program where they will put free mehendi on like free mehendi for women who come in the parlors, and like for students to sort of understand how mehendi is applied. This is a very like operational level, may I'm telling you, okay? But unfortunately, women in West Bengal do not put mehendi on their heads as much as women in Punjab do or women in Gujarat do. So what Godrej did was, Godrej decided that I am going to only talk to my partners who are going to work in Punjab or in Delhi or in Gujarat to able to like implement this strategy of mine, right? Whereas they came up with a different kind of program for West Bengal, which was the bridal program. Brides, you know, there's a culture of like brides getting extremely dressed up in West Bengal, in the northeast region, and they go through a entire sort of, you know, these treatments. You know, before getting married, they'll do facials, they'll do pedicures. So these sort of small nitty gritty changes that they brought into is the strategy change that, you know, the corporate also could pulse in. So what Pratima did was, as in Pratham, so let me also tell you the non-profit point of view of this. What Pratham did was, Pratham realized that if I need to also take in Kotak as one of my funders and Godrej as another, then for Godrej program, I need to expand my geography to that place where I can actually implement this strategy. Otherwise, it's not possible for me to do that. So my Pratima model runs in Maharashtra, West Bengal, Northeast, Tamil Nadu, whereas my Godrej model will be extremely successful in Gujarat, in Rajasthan. So this again, like coming back, comes from a very like intensive research based work that the organization has done, and was able to understand the field pulse, who's using what, therefore I'll be able to do that. And they pitched in this to Godrej, and Godrej was extremely like impressed with the impact assessment that they have done, and like followed that. I hope that answers your question. Does it?
Thank you, sure.
Okay. Yeah. Does anybody else have anything to say?
Right. Anyone else
So
with any questions? Participants?
Yeah.
So,
Like I can.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would just like to ask a question on behalf of maybe the student
Hmm.
community
Hmm.
who is on the threshold, say either in their undergraduates or, you know, say they're even in school, like, you know, class 12th. And, you know, now since the world has got deeply connected, especially say in the last 7 to 10 months, I would say,
Right.
students are thinking quite ahead. And I'm noticing this very rapid change in the young minds that earlier people used to think like, okay, this is what I'm going to do in my college, in my master, in my bachelor's, when they are in 11th, 12th. I have been counseling students in the last couple of months, and I'm quite amazed to see that people are asking about opportunities in masters being in 11th and 12th. So because they have the time to think ahead. One question, Rishti, if I want to ask you, that you mentioned that students need to focus on these skills, the hard skills that you are showing right now, the soft skills that you are showing right now.
Right.
What is the type of exposure, the type of internships, field work, or say involvement that you would want to see in a candidate's CV who can be a potential prospect to be a fundraiser? If you can highlight some of those points. Yeah.
Right. So sort of like, given that I have worked in, like I have studied social work, and that too in like equity and justice in children and family. And I always try to go back to my roots, like, you know, like I always, like whenever I am at my job, I sort of like sit back and think, yeah, I've invested 2 years of my life at TIS, and it's a rigorous syllabus, like it's a rigorous amount like of effort that you have to put in. So I always try and take it back there. You know, whatever I am doing, am I being able to sort of connect it back to the actual cause that I was connected to? Am I being able to do that? And there has been a like sort of shift for me, and I was actually talking about this to I don't know if I had a conversation about this with sir at length with a lot of people, saying that, you know, there are people who sort of move professionally from the actual thing that they have studied to sort of a different place, like a fundraising is a little further away from children and family. But if you look at it, if actually, like if you actually see the larger umbrella, also the kind of sector that we are working in, a person who's doing hospital management, is it hospital management that uh,
Masters in Hospital Administration.
administration, right? The hospital administration that Rohan is studying, or maybe somebody who is doing a women's studies course at TIS, or somebody who is doing social work. How do we all come under the same umbrella? So this the umbrella that you come under is the social sector, and no matter how much you say, you have to sort of, there are like broad 5 or 6 places that you can be in, like then it sort of shrinks down, but these are the 5 or 6 places that you have to be in. Given that fundraising to me has been a, like I see fundraising as one of the most, like I feel extremely strongly about funds and people who are interested in fundraising, because I feel that that is where the backbone or the spine of a organization really stands, and not the corporates but the non-profits. And when your entire organization is standing, or entire organization is sort of dependent on funds coming from outside, that you know that when you listen to these stories, and I have, that during these like difficult times during the lockdown, people have, you know, lost jobs. I have friends who have had pay cuts because the funders are not paying you, because the funders are not interested, because they see nothing on their reports. They are not being able to, like they're saying that you're not being able to translate my funds into the kind of work we want to do. So end of the fiscal year, it is going to be difficult, and with only 2 quarters remaining, we can't do much, so we have to cut back. At least we can keep the setups, but we have to cut back. So when I see these kind of things happening, I really feel that funds stand very strongly in these non-profits. uh, Given that, you know, somebody who wants to really work with fund management or fund raising, and I was telling this to sir also, that person has to have an efficient or a good idea about program development as a whole. And this comes from this will come from various places. For example, like working at a very monetary and evaluation level in an organization, where you sort of enter a program, like this is what I'm telling you, but when you are in that program, you will be able to figure out ki, acha, like who's on top, who's on the, like, you know, on the level of like being like who's on the interventional level, who's sort of funding it. And this is extremely sad to say, there is hierarchy. This I feel that's extremely, like this is very sad, but there is hierarchy. And when you sort of work in that space, you sort of figure out that how the program is operationally running. And unless and until I feel you are on in the field, it becomes extremely difficult for you to actually understand what changes do you actually need to make in the program. uh, so anywhere, if you want to sort of work in the area of fundraising or fund management, if you talk about internships or work experience as such, I believe anywhere, if you place yourself at the beginning of your career in organizations who are massively running these programs, and you can be innately a part of the monitoring part of it, as in evaluating the program, it becomes extremely easy for you to understand where your funds are actually churning out from. But given the kind of skills that you need to sort of start writing or start like start writing or forming these proposals, as Rohan was also saying, if I have been able to identify a problem, how am I going to actually take it there? With what kind of supportive documents do I need to take it there? Then I feel it's a good idea to have an experience in the field of writing, like having proper guidance to sort of somebody to tell you, ki, listen, this is the kind of things that you need, or this some organizations will be able to provide you with internships, or there are interns that come in to sort of understand these itself. But I don't know if at master's level this is taught, because when I was studying I had very little exposure about writing proposals or reviews and all of that. uh, but I feel like at an intern level people are given a little bit of exposure to do that. Though interns are usually kept at very, like, very operational kind of jobs which do not have to do with a lot of important things, as in funds. They are considered to be extremely, like, because I told you, the skeleton of the organization. But I feel that can be done, but with a proper guidance I feel it's possible that you can, like, to answer sir's question. So yeah, if I want to look at somebody's CV and select them for a fundraising capacity, I would always want somebody who has a idea of how to do this, like how to sort of put everything out there in formats, or in data sheets, in in proposals, to sort of, because when I was actually when I joined Pratham, they actually asked me, can you please write something and show us? We'll give you a mock, like, proposal thing, and you actually write it and you tell us. Like, even at every interval of 3 months, you have to do a massive amount of writing, which is actually a translation of what the field is actually doing. Right? I hope that answers.
Thank you, Vrishti. I think that is an interesting, I'm looking at like a missing gap maybe that you highlighted, that skills which possibly are more core and central to fundraising include the way one is representing the idea, the way
Right.
one is also kind of, disseminating a knowledge at a more functional level. So maybe I am already starting to think, Vrishti, that maybe, from our end in Catalyst, we might look at in the future the possibility of maybe collaborating with you for, like, say, an upskilling, which is more central to fundraising, right? Like how
Yeah,
you
yeah.
mentioned, if Pratham asks you to, with a mock proposal, right, based maybe on a case study, we might have like some certain modules where we can possibly support aspiring fundraisers to
Right.
get into that drill, right? I guess, and and as you said, experience matters a lot for the feedback of such kind of upskilling. So I am making a note of that. Thank you for that answer. Uh, Anyone else,
Also,
participants? Yes, Vrishti, please.
yeah, I'll just, like, quickly add something. Also, I feel like I was actually, like, talking about this, like, I actually had this conversation with sir also some time back, that these people who are about to start a career in any field is at a great advantage, given that you guys have so much time during this lockdown period, and also because everything is getting converted into a hybrid model. Like, everything that we are doing is getting converted through Zoom calls, or like, everything is getting digital. I feel this is an extremely, like, good time to sort of start things. I was actually telling this to him. Any previous experience that you have will be considered that was before the time of COVID, or before the entire shift in paradigm has happened during this lockdown. There is an so all of the organizations are going through a transformatory phase. Like they are transforming their work culture, they're transforming the kind of, because social sector has a lot to do with human touch, has a lot to do with you visiting the field, has a lot to do with interventional work, which has to be a man-to-man like a man-to-man interaction, and all of that is getting like is changing with time. And in these times, if a person is being able to grasp these skills and look at it from a very, like from the lens of COVID, like from the lens that we put on from now onwards, like we have started putting on a new lens to everything. Like COVID has an attached lens, like, you know, you look at it from this lens, it has an extra, like everybody is at a benefit, whoever starts now. Like you, at your core level, at a very fundamental level, this is in your system. So yeah, like I feel that is extremely interesting, and you guys are extremely lucky that you are in this time. Like this is a silver lining.
I think that is such a positive, thing to know, Brishti, because
Yeah.
usually everyone's talking about the pandemic and the problems and the contraction of economy. And very interestingly, let me share this with all of you. Coincidentally, today itself, if I'm not mistaken, Times of India, it's a national news, they have actually shared that that donation to non-profits has actually, they have,
Yeah.
it has accelerated. Like they have actually made a title like, India has become more caring during the time of lockdown. And I think they quoted Give India Foundation for the story. So everyone in the sector, as Brishti mentioned, I think you are all at a great advantage. Any final questions or queries from the participants, please? I can see uh, uh, people from the Calcutta Management Association, CMA. Then there is also someone representing Rotary. Sirs, ma'ams, if you want to ask anything from your end, feel free to address that in the session.
Thank you. In fact, this is the second time I am attending this program in a Catalyst Learning program, because whatever discussions are there, they are of very much high relevance in this particular pandemic situation. And I feel interested, especially this program, as I'm a founder member of one NGO, which is looking after the destitute women in the village area. So fundraising is definitely an issue. And let me tell you that I am associated with the corporates on the various counts, as I am a cost and management accountant and I'm consultant in various aspects. And what Brishti has told, I have gone through the all deliberations what she has made. Only one, I understand that one point I should just put before here, that of course the fund is being definitely gathered from the various sources. But still I'm telling you that real recipient of the people, those who want to have their skill development and capacity building in this particular situation, especially when it was talked about data analysis. This is a very important issue that's been raised here. How organizations like other corporates in the CSR fund, of course the CSR provisions are there, they're doing it. But is it for the small NGOs who want to work, how they would proceed? I just want to listen from you, because the big NGOs doesn't have any problem. Problem is that the NGOs who are really working, say someone, we went to the South Chinese Pargana and helped the people to have their food and other things like that. But now the food is not the problem. Problem is that the skill development and their occupation should be restored. And a lot of migrant laborers, they have lost their jobs. So how do you feel that these laborers could be properly the skill with the national skill development? How we can do that, please?
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for your question. I think, Brishti, if I can just sum it up for you, possibly Mr. Chittaranjan wants to understand that how does maybe a non-profit that is not working possibly at a large scale, suppose, right, can leverage these structures? I think that was one part of his question. And the second one was, if I'm not mistaken, I can be corrected if I'm wrong, that how do we understand whether our target beneficiaries, who are possibly the recipients of the funds or the recipients of the benefits of the fund, are receiving it? Is that a part of fundraising, or is that a part of the responsibility that a fundraiser should also present? If you can share your points on that. Yeah.
Right. So I'll address the second question first, because prior to fundraising or fund management, which is like if you are receiving funds from an organization for more than like a year, then you sort of become a recurrent receiver of the funds. There comes a part where you are supposed to do impact assessment. So every organization goes through like an impact assessment where the kind of work that the nonprofit is doing is being analyzed on a level where they actually try and understand whether the program is actually being is of any benefit to the actual like people who are receiving, the stakeholders, the real stakeholders of the program, or is it not, like do we need to make changes in the program model to make the program better, or do we like take the program off entirely? So this is a reason that there is an idea of a impact assessment that happens. And I don't know how much of this is relevant right now, but when these impact assessments happen, why I am stressing on data analysis is because the organizations like us, and because I've worked in smaller organizations also, it is very important that you share the raw data with your funder. The raw data, as in if your beneficiaries are like, if you are for example like South 24 Parganas, may you have worked with more than 500 plus people and they are the stakeholders of the program, then you share that raw data with your funder, where they can do random calls and ask what these people have been benefited by, how are these people benefiting, what are the challenges that they are facing, and what do they think is good about the program. This is on a very operational level that we have done, and I've seen it consistently happening at Cheshire Homes, where I've worked as an intern, at an adoption agency where I used to work in, again at Godrej. As a funder, I used to make random calls at the end of the end of the year to see that if they have received whatever was supposed to be given out. So that is one, like I feel that impact assessment comes extremely, like that is one of the things that fund management innately has in it. Like if you are a if you are a person who's working in fundraising and management, then this comes, like this is what you present before the proposal that you're going to show them for the next financial year. This is what we have done, and taking it forward from here, if there are changes required, we are going to do that. But presenting raw data is extremely important. Like when I actually talk about data analysis, raw data comes in, like it's extremely handy. So going back to the previous questions, that about a smaller organization, how they will actually reach out to corporates, is that and I very strongly feel that smaller organizations are disadvantaged because their they need to invest in marketing skills. So if you are sort of working for a cause which Hindustan Unilever or Godrej or Bain and Company or for example ICICI Foundation or big names who give out funds to many like partners, they have too many implementing partners working with them. And if you want to like sort of work with them, you have to sort of firstly figure out which cause you are very interested in, and next is the marketing scheme that you do. These organizations will have, like there will be a CSR box which is under the NGO box, where they will sort of put out ki these are our interests. And when you sort of tap in those resources, like you invest in digitally marketing yourself to these organizations, you have to increase your visibility. Like in these difficult times, I feel that everybody is locked up, like they are cooped up in their own homes. So your internet connection, your laptop and your ideas are going to take you far along. Like even if you don't have like the capacity to go meet these people at several CSR, like they organize a lot of fairs and a lot of like these conferences that happen where they get to meet them. This is a better time for smaller organizations to come up and say that we locally work in these places, and geography is not a difficulty for us because we are placed there. Then it becomes easier, then it becomes extremely easier for the funder also to say ki acha, like these people are in West Bengal, so they can do much better work in West Bengal. Like for an organization which is bigger, for example Pratham or Dasra or Save the Children, these are bigger names, they are centrally located in Delhi or Bombay, and they have to place people in for example in Jharkhand or in smaller districts, like in smaller places, their placement has to be there. But smaller organizations who are much more local in nature have every organizational capacity in that area. So if you are looking in West Bengal or in a certain place inside West Bengal, it becomes extremely handy for you to say ki I am investing my time, my skill, my capacity to work for a cause in malnutrition. Therefore, uh, and I am absolutely like restricting myself into this region, and they feel strongly about that cause, and that is how you have to prepare an entire proposal saying that why this is needed here. And that is how you do it. Like I feel like on a very like broad level, like that is how it can be done. Like good investment in marketing for social sector is very important. That is where a lot of disadvantaged we are, like that is where I feel a lot of skill needs to be developed. Keep being able to market yourself well is I think important.
Right.
I hope that
Great,
helps.
great. Yes, I'm sure that would help. We have gone past time, but it didn't feel like
Yes.
Drishti. It didn't feel like, I'm sure, because I guess the intensity of your discussion and most importantly, uh, the participation of everyone for the session added a lot of value, I hope, to everyone's perspectives. Drishti, can't thank you enough to take out your time to be with us, to share your skills, to share your understanding. And I would request everyone stay in touch with us. We would be reverting to you in a day or two with a feedback form to know your points more better. Maybe, sometimes after the session happens, it usually takes a day or two for more queries to come up. So we will also be sharing, point of contacts with you in the feedback form itself that you can use to reach back to us. And as we discussed that we are in the pipeline to create an upskilling opportunity for future fundraisers. Uh, the more the merrier, the more resilient. So we will be keeping all of you updated, and we will be also coming back to you with more similar sessions with people like Brishti from the field, uh, sharing their stories, creating a more inclusive format of learning, building social capital, and making our society resilient in the truest sense. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Is there any method of getting entrance in your organizations? Any subscriptions or any type like that? Is
Yes,
there any? Please send me the mail in my mail ID.
Surely. Your email ID is with us, Mr. Chittaranjan. Thank you for tuning in. We will definitely be sharing the details with you very soon.
Fine.
So I want to make 2 points here. First is I'm glad to see that a TCN who is making such a quality talk, and I'm happy that I'm also TCN. And second point that Drishti had mentioned, that there is something called as umbrella. Social work is an umbrella where even hospital sector and all the social sectors come together. And I feel that Catalyst Learning is one such umbrella where which is bringing people from diverse background together to have quality communication which are having strong impact on the communities around. So thank you for inviting, sir. And thank
so
you,
much, Rohan. I
Pushti.
think that's very, very kind and generous of you. Stay in touch with us. I guess no one can function alone in this world. It has been proven time and again. We can only grow collectively. So stay in touch with us. Keep sharing ideas. Thank you so much, Brishti, once more. And we will definitely
you
be
so much, sir.
reverting to all of you very soon. Stay well, stay
Thank you.
safe, maintain COVID protocols, and do write back to us via the feedback form. Bye-bye.
Bye, sir. Thank you.
Bye, sir.
Bye-bye.